it going, guys? My name's Evan, and welcome to episode 18 of Bro, It Was Suited. We're here with the bro. So this is Bro, It Was Suited, hopping into some 1-3 at Horseshoe Casino Baltimore.
Ready to lose it all, baby.
And let's get into it.
So we buy in for 400, and my brother got a seat at the same table as me. First hand comes we pick up 9-7 of spades under the gun +2. Let's get the party started. I make it 10 to go and only get a call from middle position. We see a flop heads up that comes queen 7-4 all clubs. I decide to keep the betting lead here and make it 15, and he calls rather quickly. The turn comes a jack. I decide to slow down and check it here, and now he bets $35. I decide to just make the fold here and move on to the next hand. Here we pick up 8-10 of clubs in middle position. I raise it up to $15 and get 2 calls. So we see a flop 3 ways that comes 9-9-4. The player to the right of me checks, and I do have some removal to possible holdings such as 8-9 or 9-10. So for that reason, I decide to bluff at this. I make it 25. The next player to act folds, but we do see a call from the player to my right. So we see a turn card heads up that comes an offsuit king. He checks it to me, and looking back, if he's calling the flop here, I think he's going to call the turn bet. There's not much he's going to continue here with. But for some reason, I decided to bluff again, so I make it 35 and he snap jams for 90. Obviously, we can't call this bet. I decide to fold, and of course he shows a 9. Here we pick up king 8 of clubs under the gun. I make it 15 to go and get 2 calls. So we see a flop 3 ways that comes jack, jack, deuce. It checks through, and we see a turn card of an offsuit 4. It checks through again, and now the river comes a queen. The big blind checks. I decide to take a stab at it. I make it 15, and the player to the left of me min raises it to $30. The big blind folds. Obviously I fold, and he shows king jack off. Our stack drops to a little under 250 with these 3 failed bluff attempts, so we gotta tighten up and find the right times to put money in the pot. At least my brother's winning. This is his first time playing at a casino, and he's already up over 100. So we run card dead for a bit, but then we look down at ace-4 clubs under the gun. I decide to limp here, and middle position raises it up to $13. It folds all the way back to me, and I like to make the call here. So we see a flop heads up that comes ace-9-5 with 2 diamonds. I check it to him, and he now bets $16. I like to make the call here, and we see a turn card of a 2 of hearts. I check it to him, and he pretty quickly checks it back. The river now comes a 3, so I make a straight with my 4. As I'm starting to assemble a bet, he just mucks his cards and claims to have pocket jacks. Although it was a small one, it's nice to actually drag a pot and get some momentum going. So here we pick up ace queen, we raise it up to 15 and get a bunch of callers. We just absolutely don't connect with the board and have to fold to a bet. But this next part, I'm going to have to explain really quickly. So the big stack right here, partially the reason he is the big stack is because he won a huge pot with jack 7. And that hand's been going around a few times at the table, and pretty much everyone's talking about how it's such a good hand. So here in the big blind, we look down at jack 7. Couple limps to me, I decide to just check my option here. So we see a flop multi-way that comes king jack 4. A middle position player bets $10. For that price, having second pair, I decide to just make the call, and everyone else folds. So the turn and river are both blanks, they both go check check. I show my hand, and it's good. Nothing crazy about this hand, but only 2 hands later, on the button, we look down at jack 7 suited this time. I decide to just limp here, and the small and big blind limp as well. So we see a flop multi-way that comes 10-7-4. It checks through, so we see a turn card of an offsuit 3. The small blind that loves jack 7 now bets $15. It folds all the way to me, and I decide to just make the call here. So we see a river card of a jack giving us 2 pair now. He checks it to me, and I decide to bet $30 here. He thinks about it for a bit, but ends up folding, and of course, we had to show it.
Guess what?
What?
Okay, I promise this is the last time, but only 2 hands later again, we look down at jack 7. Here in middle position, this time I decide to raise it to $10, and we end up getting 1 call. So we see a flop heads up that comes 8-6-3. He checks it to me, and I decide to just check it back here. The turn now comes a 10. He checks it to me, and I decide to bet $15, and he pretty quickly makes the call. The river comes a king. He checks it to me again. I decide to bluff at it for $20, and what happens next is pretty interesting. I'll let you listen in.
I thought it was unbeatable.
You know why? Because I have a Jack 7.
No way! Oh my God! Yes! And he missed it. Damn. What is going on?
So he ended up having Jack 7 as well, so we bluffed him off a chop, and we end up scooping a small pot here. Before we get into this next big hand, if you could hit that subscribe button, it would be great. It helps out the channel a ton. Wanted to give a quick shout out to the players at my table. 3 of them actually ended up subscribing while we were playing, and the guy to my left, Robert, was actually already a subscriber since episode 10. So here in middle position, we look down at ace deuce. I decide to limp here, and Robert to the left of me makes it 11. The big stack and the big blind make the call for 11, and it folds back to me. Closing the action here, I'm getting a decent price, so I decide to make the call. So we see a flop 4 ways that comes ace-6 deuce, we flop top and bottom pair. The big blind decides to lead out here for $25. I decide to just make the call here, hoping that one of the players behind makes the call as well to get more money in the pot. And that's what happens. Robert makes the fold, but the big stack does make the call. So we see a turn card 3 ways that comes an offsuit queen. Kind of a scare card because now we do lose to ace queen, but not the worst card in the deck. The big blind now leads for 70 this time, with only about 180 behind. When it gets to me, I'm not sure if I like a call here because I could be letting any of his draws get there for free, and my hand can't really improve anymore, so for that reason, I think there's only one move here.
All in?
All in.
I decide to go all in. The big stack ends up folding pretty quickly, and the big blind goes pretty deep into the tank here. When he doesn't snap call, I know I'm ahead. However, after some deliberation, he does let go of his hand. We scoop a nice one though, and later he told me he had ace 10. The big stack later told me that he had 3-5 of spades, so kinda like my raise on the turn there. I'm still trying to stack my chips, and the next hand, we look down at pocket queens. There's a raise to $25. I'm just a little too strong to make the call here, so I decide to 3-bet it to $75. It folds all the way back to him. He doesn't have that much left, so I'm hoping for a shove. But after some time, he does make the fold, saying he had pocket deuces. Only 2 hands later, we look down at ace king. Under the gun here, I make it 15 to go, and only the small blind and big blind make the call. So we're seeing a flop 3 ways in position that comes jack high. Both the small blind and big blind check it to me. I decide to just check it back. The turn comes a lovely king giving us top. The small blind checks, the big blind now bets $25, and I decide to make the call here. The river now comes a blank, and the big blind starts grabbing a fair amount of chips, somewhere around the $75 range. After he grabs this though, and thinks for a bit, he ends up checking it to me. Now, I've heard about this tell before, and from what I've heard, this is kind of a sign of a showdown-driven hand, and I really wish I bet here, because if this is the case, I think you can squeak out a small value bet on the river here, but for some reason, I was just a little confused, so I decided to just check it back. He ended up having ace-jack, so the read was right, but we do still drag a nice pot here. Only a couple hands later, in the big blind, we look down at pocket tens. So don't worry about this hand, we just completely whiffed. However, this was such an action-packed 30 minutes, we went from being down almost 200 to now being up 100. So I've already told the table this is my last hand, and we look down at some cowboys. One limp to me, I decide to make it 20 here. It folds all the way back to the limper. He's not that big of a stack, so I'm hoping for a shove. But after some time, he says, I really want to shove this ace deuce in, and makes the fold. And after this, we decide to hit the cage.
So I was in for 400, out for 499, brought it back at the end. Really happy with that.
In for 300, out for 494.
He's better than me apparently, but good day for the brothers.
Evan took a long trip to Stuckville, and he made the full round trip.
But yeah, glad to end on a win. I'll put the 18 episode total right here. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.